And we're back. Welcome to another episode of the House Husband Diaries. As always, I am your host, Carter C. And if you notice, right off the bat, the flowers behind me died. So, I'm going to have to find something else to make that background look all even and symmetrical because I'm anal like that. So we're getting into some meat. We're getting into some good stuff here on the thrill of the chase. And I thought the topic for today would be fun to discuss. What do the subtle hints in the thrill of the chase look like? Subtle. What does subtle look like? How might they be hiding in plain sight? So I guess to start this, I'll read a couple of definitions of subtle off the trusty phone, dictionary.com. So I thought this is interesting. The fourth definition is requiring mental acuteness, penetration, or discernment, which could be wise, discerning, could be cunning, wily, or crafty. Number 7 I thought was really interesting. Insidious in operation. I think it's insidious. Insidious in operation. Not deciduous like trees. But he uses the word insidious several times. We can get to that later. And then the last one, the last definition, is skillful, clever, or ingenious. So there's a number of different ways that subtle hints could be in the thrill of the chase. I mean, he uses the word insidious multiple times. Is that a subtle hint? Using the definition or using one of the definitions is not necessarily subtle as in cunning or crafty or clever and skillful. And I mean, you could argue it might be clever to use a different word, kind of, the thesaurus. But it's not like hidden in plain sight, you know what I mean? Like, in some ways, I have this idea that crafty, wily, subtle, that is just sitting there, like he says it, but it's in the way, in the normal course of one of these stories that he's saying, I just put it out there in plain sight, but it's subtle because it's like a double entendre, has a different meaning than just the words in the story. So I look at like a blatant, maybe it's just blatant, like I said, he says it out there. Like one of the, I've got some places marked in the book here. One of the, let's see if I can find it. I have places marked in the book, but I forgot to write down which one in order. How about them apples? Lesson for next time. And gotta do this better. So, page 10, important literature. That little lady probably knew where every book was in that whole store. And when we arrived at the exact spot, she pulled down 2 books and just handed them to me and walked away, tossing her thick braids back and forth like they had purpose. She didn't even say goodbye or anything. But Terry Scant with marble gaze, just take the chest and go in peace. Just go. The exact spot. Is that blatant? Is that subtle? Is that nothing? I don't know. That's what we're here to digest, to try to figure out. What does blatant mean to you? What does subtle mean to you? Something could be blatantly obvious when you read through the thrill of the chase. It could be blatantly obvious to you, but it would be very subtle to someone else. It's almost like the warm waters halting. warm as temperature is so variable when you start saying, well, I don't really think that's warm. Like I said in a previous video, I guess it was that first clue video, is, what's warm water to my wife is scalding hot to me. And what is warm water to me is pretty tepid and cool to my wife. So how would we ever find the chest and the starting point of our quest if warm is temperature? Because it's so variable. I mean, I could be there 100 times and never, if my idea of warm is different than Forrest. So I look at themes. He says aberrations. So it could be subtle, could be blatant. What about linking several mentions? So whether they're subtle or they're blatant, but he says look at aberrations, and I think, gosh, I've read this book so many times, and there's so many aberrations in this book, right? There's so many questionable stories of why did he say certain things? Why did he include certain stories? Why did he write the stories the way that he did? And so then I'm looking at, well, maybe there's an aberration or something in him mentioning across multiple times. And one of the things that I'll share about linking several mentions that are subtle in some ways, in my opinion, but it's repetitive, is running across fields and falling down. And move this aside here. So I think it's really interesting that he falls down a lot in this book, in this memoir. He says he never falls down, but yet he falls down a bunch. So page 42, Gypsy Magic, third paragraph. If my head was in the window, I could hear the sound and instantly knew what it was. The screen was easy to unlatch, so I jumped to the ground and run as fast as I could through the cemetery and across a wide field toward the firelight. By lying on my stomach under a wagon and pushing the tall grass aside, I could really see up close. Yada, yada, yada. Pushing the tall grass aside, lying on his stomach, running across a field. And then we go to page 70, Stout-Hearted Men, bottom of the page. To avoid detection, I ran full speed across an open field, crying all the way. There's crying and tears again, until I reached a small county road that led back home. I remember falling twice while trying to get through the dumb barbed wire fence. Okay, we ran across a field, he falls down. Maybe there's a barbed wire fence that we have to cross. And then, page 100. It is more than sad to me, this is my war for me. It is more than sad to me, not just that the French soldiers are dead and buried, but that no one knows where they are or even who they were. No one is crying now that half a century has passed. The ground knows and the tall grass knows, but they won't tell. There's the tall grass and the ground again. He didn't fall down there, but there's crying, there's tall grass like it was earlier. It just seems like that could be subtle, it could be nothing. It seems like maybe there's aberrations, because he mentions earlier in My War for Me that, he falls down in that clearing. And he just said, he said he never falls down, but he talks about falling down multiple times. So the last thing that I'll say on this topic, other than I'd love to know what your definition of subtle is, or how you're looking at what those subtle hints possibly could be. So please share that. Carter@hhdiaries.com. Comment. But it also themes. So I'm going to go through, I've got over 20 themes that I need to continue to organize, and I'll start making some videos and start sharing those here in the next few days. But the themes: time, tears, old ladies, pies, brown, the color brown. I mean, there's different things, running and falling down. There's all sorts of things that seem to be aberrations. That why did they make it in this story and this story? Borders bookstore, borderline biddies, asterisk in history, midnight, by the fire, juniper. And there's so many things that come across: sitting under trees, lying under trees, sleeping under trees, being brave and in the wood. I mean, the list goes on, and every time that I think maybe there might be something to one of these themes, that there's some subtle connection through these themes, and this might be it, and I find more, I reread, and it's just unbelievable the number of repetitive themes that are subtle. Being smart that way, or clever like that. You can laugh at me if you want to. It's said multiple times throughout the book. So these are the themes that I'll be doing. It's putting out there as videos. I'll just do one theme per video, and we'll just keep going through it. And I'd love to hear your comments. I'm completely ecstatic with the way I'm getting feedback and people are viewing the videos. I never thought, I'm not doing anything right now, and it's just really cool to have some back and forth, because I don't really get to talk to anybody about this. So the more people that are chatting, that are putting out comments, the more I enjoy it. It's super fun. So let me know what you think. It's always nice to hear what other people are thinking. And yeah, thanks again for watching. We'll talk to you next episode.